New York, September 24, 2025. In a development that drew global attention, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. The bilateral engagement, though brief in its public visibility, carried deep symbolism as two nations navigating war, sanctions, and shifting alliances sought a direct channel of dialogue. The meeting began with a firm handshake between the two leaders. Cameras captured Zelensky and al-Sharaa standing together before moving into a closed-door session, accompanied by their delegations. Both sides projected cautious cordiality, aware that the symbolism of their meeting extended beyond the room. This encounter came at a particularly sensitive time. Ukraine remains locked in its confrontation with Russia, while Syria continues to grapple with internal challenges and decades of geopolitical entanglement. For many observers, Zelensky's decision to meet al-Sharaa at the UN General Assembly reflected his strategy of widening Ukraine's diplomatic reach and securing new allies in forums where Moscow has historically enjoyed influence. For Syria, the meeting with Zelensky was equally significant. Long isolated on the international stage, Damascus has been seeking gradual normalization with various states. Engaging directly with Kyiv signaled an intention to step into broader discussions, including those where Russia's role is being openly questioned. The images released by the Ukrainian presidency showed both leaders seated across from each other, with their delegations carefully watching. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, dressed in his traditional suit, maintained an attentive posture, while Zelensky, known for his military-inspired attire, leaned forward, emphasizing seriousness. During the exchanges, the emphasis was placed on potential avenues for cooperation. While neither side disclosed the full contents of their conversation, diplomats present confirmed that the talks centered on humanitarian concerns, possible reconstruction cooperation, and the need to keep diplomatic channels open despite the complexities of their respective situations. Zelensky, known for seizing symbolic moments, reportedly underlined Ukraine's stance on sovereignty and territorial integrity. His presence with al-Sharaa was carefully calibrated, firm enough to communicate Kyiv's resilience, yet open enough to project Ukraine as a state willing to engage beyond its immediate allies. The meeting culminated in a notable gesture, the signing of diplomatic documents. Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiga, and Syria's Minister of Foreign Affairs and expatriates, Asad al-Shaibani, took their seats to formalize the agreements. In the presence of both presidents, the two ministers exchanged documents after signing. The act was highly choreographed, with photographers capturing every step, from the ink on paper to the exchange of folders, and finally the two leaders standing together as witnesses. The Ukrainian presidency released footage of the event, emphasizing the historic nature of the exchange. By sealing the documents under the gaze of Zelensky and al-Sharaa, both governments sent a message of seriousness to the international community. Although much of the conversation remained behind closed doors, the leaders made several statements that marked the tone of the engagement. President Zelensky stressed Ukraine's need for solidarity on the world stage. Zelensky said, "Ukraine's fight for sovereignty is not just about our borders. It is about the principle that no nation should be allowed to erase another from the map." He also reminded the broader Assembly of Nations that unity remained the strongest weapon against aggression. Zelensky said, "Every voice that joins us in defense of international law strengthens our common security." For his part, President Ahmed al-Sharaa highlighted the importance of dialogue. Al-Sharaa said, "In times of division, meetings like this remind us that diplomacy must never be abandoned." He went further, framing Syria's position as one of seeking bridges rather than isolation. Al-Sharaa said, "Syria believes that even nations under pressure, under war, or under sanctions must find the courage to sit together and speak." The Syrian leader's comments drew particular attention, given the country's long years of strained relations with Western capitals. His willingness to appear with Zelensky signaled a possible recalibration in Syria's diplomatic approach. The symbolic value of this meeting cannot be understated. For Ukraine, the handshake with al-Sharaa carried multiple layers of meaning. It showed that Kyiv was not confined to a Western-centric foreign policy, but was actively seeking conversations across regions, including the Middle East, where Russia has historically held significant sway. For Syria, the implications were equally notable. By meeting Zelensky, Al-Sharaa positioned himself as open to engaging states that Moscow would rather keep at arm's length from Damascus. This nuanced move could reflect Syria's recognition of shifting dynamics in global power structures, especially as debates over multipolarity dominate discussions at the United Nations. Analysts suggested that while the agreements signed may not immediately translate into deep cooperation, they established a symbolic precedent. Diplomatic observers in New York pointed out that the meeting demonstrated how international alignments remain fluid in 2025, with traditional divisions giving way to unexpected dialogues. For Zelensky personally, the meeting was also a continuation of his strategy to frame Ukraine's war not merely as a European crisis, but as a global test of international law. Each handshake, each photo opportunity at the UN General Assembly is carefully curated to reinforce that narrative. By appearing with Al-Sharaa, Zelensky sent a message to Moscow. Ukraine is capable of engaging even with states long within Russia's sphere of influence. At the same time, Zelensky avoided rhetoric that might alienate other partners. His words were balanced between reaffirming Ukraine's principles and showing openness to dialogue. For Damascus, the event came at a delicate time. The Syrian leadership has been navigating the slow process of normalization in the Arab world while maintaining ties with its traditional allies. Al-Sharaa's decision to meet Zelensky was therefore interpreted by some as a signal of independence, suggesting that Syria would not limit its diplomacy solely to Moscow's preferences. Still, questions remain over how far Syria is willing to go in redefining its alliances. For now, the symbolic handshake with Zelensky may be less about policy shifts and more about demonstrating a willingness to be part of broader global conversations. The final images of the ceremony captured the four figures: Andriy Sybiga, Volodymyr Zelensky, Ahmed al-Sharaa, and Asad al-Shaibani, standing side by side after the signing of documents. The framing of the shot, with both leaders at the center, spoke volumes about the intended symbolism. While the agreements themselves were not immediately detailed, the act of putting ink to paper underlined a commitment to continue the dialogue initiated in New York. Observers noted that in a world where every diplomatic gesture is scrutinized for meaning, this handshake and signing ceremony stood out as an example of cautious, symbolic diplomacy. The meeting between President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Ahmed al-Sharaa on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly was more than a formal handshake. It was a calculated, symbolic act that revealed the shifting nature of international alignments in 2025. For Ukraine, it was an opportunity to reinforce its narrative of sovereignty and international law. For Syria, it was a chance to demonstrate openness and reclaim a measure of visibility on the global stage. As Zelensky put it, every voice that joins us in defense of international law strengthens our common security. Whether this new line of dialogue evolves into practical cooperation remains to be seen, but for now, the world has taken notice.